We have a really important model to test today with you guys. It's Opus 5. It's a really important model, and the reason why it's important is that we had Fable, obviously really impressive model, but it costs quite a lot. And we can see that Anthropic even tried to keep it sort of within the subscription, but it couldn't like completely keep it. But now Opus is in, presumably it will be fully within the subscription. And if you look at the API pricing, it's half the price. And the reason why this was an important model is that while Fable was great, it was getting a lot of pressure from other models, such as we had Kimi K3, which was really strong open source model, and we have GPT 5.6 as well, which is a really well-regarded model. So what we want to do with you guys today is to, as usual, take a look at a lot of different tests. So we have 40-odd prompts, 150 tests. We're probably not going to have a look at every single one of them, but I want to show you what this model is capable of. And we want to see kind of what are the vibes that we are getting. So we're not going to test every single like dimension of the model, but I want to show you a lot. So in here, if you've seen these tests before, Acropolis is one of the nice prompts for me to test. It looks beautiful, has some complexity, different elements need to be coordinated. And to my eye, this is really, really excellent result. This kind of coordination with different elements like built up together. There are no like obvious issues that I see. Sometimes there's roof upside down or something like weird like that. The only criticism I would give is that there is no dynamism to this at all, right? So it's very static imagery. And what we saw from Fable, which I thought was quite interesting, is that it had this kind of dynamism embedded kind of by default. If we're going to compare it to, for example, 5.6 X high, and by the way, Opus we're testing on high here. So X high, probably not a big deal, but just keep that in mind. I would say clearly Opus is better here, right? So much richer scene, and GPT 5.6 here is like okay, like decent, but not that impressive, to be honest. Oh yeah, that's one we had already. So let's take a look at Kimi, for example. Kimi is like noticeably worse here, right? Different elements detached, quite static, less rich, like not even worth like particularly dwelling on. And if you're going to compare to Sonnet 5, again, like quite a boring scene. So we get like quite a big jump in terms of the level of fidelity, the kind of interesting elements to it. GLM 5.2, which is, by the way, it's been what, like a month or two or something like that now. It's a pretty decent result, but it doesn't feel as rich and kind of interesting, but like pretty good. So yeah, so far, like you can see, at least by this result, I would say that Opus is doing really good. But obviously just one test, 3D tests, let's not get too carried away. We still have yet to see Fable, which is the most interesting comparison that we have. So this is, I do like this test, the kind of floating balloons. The richness of the scene is something that I really notice with Opus generations. We've got this rich elements here. We've got the sun in the background. Everything just very crisp. There's not like balloon that is like, I don't know, things that sort of falling apart or something like that. There's not like muted colors, which we often see. Like it's really quite full on, which is interesting, which is not the case that we've seen with like other Opus models necessarily. Like you can see here, like GPT generation is pretty decent, but there's just some level of richness that Opus has here that is different. If we are going to take a look at Kimi, for example, in here as well, Kimi just obviously looks like a lot less rich, a lot less interesting here. So I'm not gonna dwell on this, but just bear this in mind that I think Kimi does have some good generations, and we're gonna probably see some, but not necessarily every single time. So Fable, right? So this was Opus versus Fable. So that's the most interesting comparison here. Now, notice, and again, not the most important thing in the world, but we're going to try to tease out what are the interesting elements here, right? So Opus to me feels very crisp, very solid, very kind of just great generation. But if you look at Fable, like what do you see? Now, what I see is there are birds flying, right? There's this kind of extra level, right? Birds flying, that there's certain aesthetic to it, right? There's certain kind of dynamism to it, right? There are no birds here. They're all kind of, all the balloons flying like this in the same direction, right? It's very solid. When I see here, what I see here, right, is that there's this kind of more dynamic system, right? One balloon is going up, another one is going down, right? That's what you expect from a complex system, such as like a bunch of balloons flying with different, I don't know, aerodynamics, and some are going up, some are going down, right? The birds flying and so on. So that's something I want to point to, is that I think Fable is the only model that does anything like that at all, right? A lot of the time you kind of see the generations, and they are pretty good generations, like between those two. Like there's nothing to fault Opus here, but when you look at Fable generation, there's just something about it. You'll see it and it's like, oh damn it, like this is good, like this is good stuff. Like I haven't even considered it or put that into a prompt for it to be like so dynamic and strong. And I think that's what particularly I'm particularly impressed in this model. So I've got some new prompts that I want to run past. We'll see, it's a bit of an experiment. The idea with these prompts, and I think it's kind of creative and also adds complexity, is that we've got the agent mode, which gives us opportunity to search, kind of bring in different data, and also do these generations. And I've got this idea that many famous artists, they kind of painted the same-ish thing in different maybe times of their lives. You can see the Cézanne here, for example, 1885 to 1905, for example. So that kind of stretch of time. And they change their style, or maybe they do a different season or something like that. And we want to kind of leverage this idea. So it's a kind of long prompt, and you can see the strength of the agent mode here is that you can pull in the different paintings. So hopefully you can kind of see, it doesn't matter like huge amount, like I'm not gonna test you later, it's not an exam, but so you can see how it's pulling it in, and then it's like creating this kind of immersive thing. Anyway, just so you know what I'm going for here. So what I want to see here is this kind of generation where we've got these different elements transforming from one to another. And we want to see like how good is the model at interpreting the image inputs and creating these kind of more immersive worlds. And this is like kind of a creative task, right? So I even got it, this kind of orbit and immersive, which I guess kind of same mode, but there's gallery mode, there's orbit mode, so it has this kind of 3D representation of the painting, which honestly, like, to me, this kind of such a high level of complexity to be able to do this. So I'm very impressed by this, this kind of generation. I think this is quite cool. And you can see it kind of puts it back together into the painting. I don't know, I love this. So I hope you like it too. So I want to see, I can't actually quite remember which ones work, so maybe there will be like a few broken ones. But let's see what GPT does. So I'll tell you what my impression of like the difference between like these models and the GPT, and like GPT model, for example, versus like Opus models. Is GPT models are really focused on following the instructions. And I think Claude models are a bit more interpretive, and sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't, right? So what I mean by this is that if you see the difference between this one, same prompt, right? It went straight away through like representation of a painting. But here it decided to show me like the actual paintings, right? This is like, from what I can tell, this is literally the painting. If I do this, it does switch to this kind of orbit, kind of 3D mode, but it's kind of weird. Like it's like, I think it's sort of taking the painting, sort of making it kind of in 3D. Like, I don't know if you can make sense of this, but to me, this is like quite a weird idea what it's trying to do here. Like you can see, right? So I think it's like, took the painting and then sort of like 3D'd it or something. So my interpretation of this is that Opus in the first one tried to like imagine what it should look like. And then the GPT model like literally said, okay, the best way to get to a painting is to have a painting, and then I'm gonna stretch it out and kind of do something that will align to it as closely as possible. And I think that's why I also like this test, is that I think it maps to the real world. I think this is how these models perform, right? I think the GPT models very strong at like follow instructions, do what you tell it. It will like go move mountains for you, hug and face, and like do just complete the task. And I think the Opus ones, the like, or like Fable is similar, where it's much more likely to kind of interpret it, try to understand what you're going for, and kind of execute that. What we're looking at, by the way, is Kimi generation. It's a kind of closer to Anthropic in terms of the type of generation that it did, but it's clearly nowhere as nice, right? So like when we looked at like the Opus generation here, I thought this was like really, really nicely done. But I think for Kimi, this is like kind of okay effort. Not that interesting, I must say. So Fable. I actually can't remember what is going to come out as, so I'm kind of curious. Okay, let's see. Okay, so doing the transformation, and it's kind of taking each element and kind of actually moving it around. And this is actually cool. So how would it have even done this? Kind of mapped each element where it should be sitting at each generation, and then kind of pulling it together. And this is actually very, very interesting way of doing this, right? So if we are going to look at them like side by side here, it's in here, I would say the difference here, right? It kind of grouped the elements, but with Fable, it kind of like created this big mosaic and it just shifting them around. And yeah, this kind of 3D, let's take a look. This is nuts, right? So let's take a look. Oh, wait. Oh yeah, so it's moving it around like that in the 3D space and mapping kind of each one like that. How does it even do this? This is crazy. All right, so it is literally the same ones as far as I can tell. Anyway, you can see, like if you're gonna look at benchmarks that Anthropic published, there are many benchmarks where Opus is actually higher than Fable. But I think this is, maybe it's like true in some narrow sense, but it doesn't sound true to me in this kind of sense of like what we love Fable for, is this kind of level of creativity, interpretation, ambition, kind of creating these dynamic systems, right? I think on that dimension, to me, that's not a match at all, right? So I want to see though, also what others we have. So I think we have like a couple of generations here. So same idea. We've got Opus here. Matisse has this kind of 4 different creations, and it kind of goes through time. And what you should pay attention to is that this was like pretty normal transition, is that it kind of goes from less abstract to more abstract, right? So it kind of goes and transitions like that. It kind of morphs like that, which is quite cool. Like that is actually pretty nice. I want to see what Kimi did. I actually don't remember what Kimi did here. Actually, hopefully that worked. Let me try. Oh yeah. So Kimi, let's
Welcome
see.
to this virtual exhibition.
Oh, did you guys see? Okay, I'll mute this, but it does have welcome to this virtual exhibition. So it actually did this sound as well, which is always fun. What's going on? Is it actually going to do anything? Side profile. Okay. Okay, I think there's something broken. So I feel like maybe something broke here, so I don't want to like judge it too harshly on this. But let's see. Let's take a look at Fable. Hopefully that worked. Oh wow. Okay. Okay. So let's start this again. So if this was Opus, let me just open it in a similar way, right? Opus versus Fable, right? Much more detailed from Fable already. And we want to see that kind of transformation going as well, right? So each element like morphing into one another. And yeah, I think it's slightly like cheated here, but look, like this kind of level of generation here, like this kind of looks, you wouldn't be able to tell what's going on there, but I think here, like this kind of looks crazy to me. So again, so I don't overindulge into the details of 3D generations. Like what are we interested here is not necessarily that, oh, it's so good at 3D, right? What I'm looking for here is that what's the level of kind of creativity of execution of these tasks? What's the level of ambition here? And so far, like to my eye, Opus is very solid, but it's not as creative. It doesn't have that flair, which I guess is hard for the regular benchmarks to kind of show this. So I'll look forward to seeing our agent score benchmark, which should see maybe in 2 or 3 days time after this video comes out. And I think that should be illustrative. I feel like we're going to show this in a nice way. This is actually this specific one. I promise I'm going to stop with this artsy one soon. We're going to go to other stuff. I had these 4 paintings and kind of did this transition from being more abstract, or rather less abstract, more precise, into being much more abstract, which I thought was a really, really cool idea. So the kind of cool transition I thought might be interesting to generate. So I think Opus did really good job here. And I also want to see how Fable did, because I think that's the most interesting one. And if I was to do that transition, yeah, I will tell you that Fable did far more accurate job in here. That kind of transition from having this kind of tree here, you can see this kind of barely looks like a painting versus this, and into that very abstract form. So again, kind of Fable did better here. But I'm kind of pointing out these differences in terms of what Fable can do, and I think the important part is that we calibrate how good Fable is versus Opus. It doesn't mean to say that Opus is a bad model or anything like that. So if we didn't have Fable, I think we would all be looking now at these kinds of generations that you get from Opus, and we'll be saying this is like really superb generation. And I think this is kind of voxel generation. In here, I think that's the best roof I've seen. I think that is really cool. This kind of city organization is really, really excellent. So certainly it's hard to know how well it transitions into like every single thing. But in terms of like the level of generations that we can get out of it, it's certainly like a big step up. Like for example here, JLM52, right? Not even a contest in terms of like between these two. So it is like a pretty solid model. I definitely don't want to like imply that it isn't. So saying that though, we want to take a look at other kinds of tasks. what I'm interested in the in this kind of 3D generations is this kind of coordination of different elements and kind of creativity and so on. But there are also the real tasks that people want to do, such as data visualization. Right, so in here we give it a bunch of data, cherry blossom, and we want to see how well it does. And one thing that we know from, for example, like a Kimi model did particularly well is this kind of UI, the front end, that it was top on above Fable, by the way, on our front end arena. And I must say, like, okay, maybe it's not quite as tight as you might want it to be. I think maybe like Opus is a bit tighter. I wouldn't say like, oh, Kimi is so much worse. Well, clearly not. Like, Kimi actually has quite nice style. If that's the kind of thing that you were going for, then you could totally pick Kimi side by side. Like, I think that wouldn't be an unreasonable thing to do. And also you can see, like, this is Fable, right? And this is Kimi. So I think you wouldn't be like, oh, clearly, Fable's so much better than Kimi. No, Kimi's like did a good job. And GLM52 here also did a solid job. So it's also like when you have maybe tasks which don't require this kind of level of creativity or extreme complexity, and you've got, here's like a bunch of data that you want to visualize. I'm not going to say that like Opus is so much better than Kimi, for example, here. Like totally deserved to be towards that kind of top end. One types of tasks we also want to test are things like, it's a kind of combination of things, right? So one is that in here, for example, we're saying recommend an AI assistant for 200 person international company, and it's using this and a bunch of conditions and so on. And then what we want is that go away, like do some research, use your judgment, and then prepare some kind of presentation for me to kind of make a decision. So it's pretty typical kind of task that you expect to see. And it kind of did all of that, did some research, worked away, and then it presented this. So let's take a look. So in here, actually maybe this is better. So in here we've got so if you select one, we've got some evidence here. That's not bad. I'm not like in love with it using like dark mode for this. Like I feel like if you're doing a presentation, that's not ideal. Maybe like a smoother version of this would have been better, but that's quite nice. Like, you get different controls. You got like different focus. That's not bad. In terms of the quality of research, like I feel like, it's hard to just kind of say it at a glance. It seems kind of reasonable. Maybe all of the systems seems to be missing granola. Like, I don't know why. Like, it's so weird. Like, everyone's using granola, right? So, kind of odd. And in terms of, if we're just going to look at UI, like GPT-5.6 here, like, is a little bit, kind of a bit blah, like a bit too much. And it has like too much text here. It doesn't like strike you. Like here, I think it visually dominates more the kind of visual straight away. It's like, oh, I want to focus and look at where they are, versus here, just like blah, a lot of information, a lot of text that's not that helpful. So if you look at Kimi, I think, that's like, there's something broken here. So I don't know if it's, I never know, like, is it fair to judge? You can probably fix it with one prompt, so maybe don't look at that part too much. But like, it does have kind of sloppy brackets and so on. So it's like, I would say Opus kind of is better here. If we're gonna look at Fable, like maybe a little bit tidier, and maybe it's like a little bit smoother, but like knowledge work, okay, very light version of knowledge work, but Fable doesn't like strike me as like being so much better here, right? Like, then at least this kind of presenting information, like Opus seems to be like actually kind of nicer. And what I find for that kind of thing, and we'll see whether this is the case with Opus or not, but it did feel to me like when I was testing Fable, it's like, it can be really, really impressive, but it's kind of a bit lazy. It's like, not, maybe lazy is not quite the right term, but it's like it's lacking ambition that versus its capability. So I think it could have smashed that task, the previous one, but it just chose not to, which is kind of annoying. So I think if you know how to push it, then maybe you can get much better results. So this is another test here. It's kind of knowledge worky like, where we've got the current build out of AI infrastructure, and we wanted to go away and find 30 significant AI data centers and kind of show where they are around the globe and so on. And like, to me, this looks really solid, like really pleasant to see. I feel like I can look around, I can like get more information. Like, this looks nice. Like, this is even a flat version, like kind of a little bit buggy, but like all solvable. So this to me looks actually kind of excellent. It's hard to judge the quality of research, but I'll just trust it's not like completely made up. But in terms of UI and display, was quite solid. If I was to look at the OpenAI one, I mean, this kind of looks like much weaker here. And again, OpenAI is still not quite up there in terms of the whole kind of UI quality. Still, like, for some reason decides to put these blah big things and so on. So I think it needs to tune its taste a little bit. And if we're gonna look at Kimi, I don't know what's happening here. That's just kind of bad. But I wonder if sometimes models just kind of go down the wrong track. Like, why did it decide to do SVG here? Probably just wrong. Maybe it would have been better. But if we compare versus Fable, and again, the most interesting comparison for us is Opus versus Fable here. Like, I think Opus is better, right? That to me is more interesting, feels more informative, feels deeper, and so on. So I'll tell you what my theory is here, is that clearly Anthropic has some kind of, for a long time we knew this, right? They are very good at UI, they're very good at coding, and it almost feels like this kind of UI sensibilities and capabilities, just 3D render and UI, all of that is kind of independent, almost, not entirely divorced, but less dependent on underlying kind of model smarts. And I think they just were able, let's say if it's a RL pipeline, I don't know, but let's say if it was, they could just keep the same pipeline and train Fable with it, train Opus with it, train maybe not Haiku, they haven't had that for a while, but let's say they could, right? It was probably really good. But, and they can keep making it better, right? Put more data in, put more kind of, RL environments and put better UI sensibilities and so on. And that's why we go from Fable being like really, really nice to Opus being like even better, right? But it doesn't mean to say that the underlying model is better. And that is much harder to replicate. So hopefully what you saw from these earlier tests about this dynamism, right? You cannot get that. Maybe, that's kind of my theory, maybe you can't get that from just these kind of pure RL environments, pure like UI sensibilities, right? You maybe know that, oh, in here it's good idea to put like a map, maybe don't use SVG, maybe like put this kind of 3D map. You can kind of learn that, but it's much harder to learn that, or when you're doing a balloon generation, then you should really maybe think about the dynamics of the different ones so they don't all float in exactly the same direction. And I think that kind of rich understanding of the world is what we can see with Fable, that we are not seeing with Opus, even though it's, I think, entirely possible that when we've got the front-end code arena come out, when we've got other benchmarks come out, it's entirely possible that Opus will beat Fable on these kinds of just pure front-end tests, but it wouldn't beat maybe Fable on this kind of broader, deeper tasks that it needs to do that require this kind of depth of understanding, maybe kind of better interpretation, more creativity, you know, things like that. So that's the kind of my theory for now. I don't know what the benchmark scores are going to be as I'm recording this now, so I'm not like giving you any secret information here. I'm just trying to kind of extrapolate from what I'm seeing in practice. But we'll see if I'm right or not. But that's the kind of the way I'm thinking right now. So, couple more tests. Let's see how we go. This one, I really like this test because it's a kind of combination of like the world understanding and also how you want to visualize. And by the way, if you're planning a trip, highly recommend this kind of use case, especially summertime. Great use case is we want to have a Swiss Alps trip in September. It's for 2 people, blah, 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 has a bunch of requirements again. You need to go away, do some research, which we want our agents to do. That's kind of part of it. Then we want you to put together like a route that I would take for me to do the walk. And then I want to actually see what it's like, right? I want to see and kind of follow and so on. And I think this is like, this to me, UI looks quite good. Kind of at a glance, I mean, I don't know this like specifically, but to me that looks like pretty reasonable. We're not like climbing mountains, it's not like all completely flat. It looks like, feels like a nice one. And it kind of goes 400 or 500 meters up. That looks reasonable. 16 kilometers, a bit much. I mean, I'm not like that big of a hiker to go 16 kilometers, but not that I can walk 16 kilometers, but it's more like, you know, if you are doing the more of a kind of hike through the mountains, quite hard going. GPT 5.6 here, like render the UI is worse. Like I think that's, we kind of know that already. I think like glancing at this, like, okay, maybe not like entirely fair, but I think like the route is not that interesting here. It's like kind of a little bit flat, a bit descending. And it's sort of like feels, I don't know, looking at it superficially, I'm more excited by the Opus one. If we're gonna look at Kimi here, let's see what that's like. I mean, UI is kind of a little bit annoying and like it's a bit too much. Like I want to just look at the map. It's a little bit buggy, but the route looks like pretty good. If I'm gonna, like, it's a little bit sloppy, but I think you can kind of put it together. I think it's sort of workable. But yeah, the route looks pretty good to me. I think it's like, yeah, it's up and down. Again, did I ask for 16 kilometers? They're all about that sort of length. I can't remember. But the one I'm interested in, again, is Fable. So let's see. So Fable, I think like it chose to have a richer map, and you can see straight away, right? Between like Kimi giving me this website with like all of that stuff, it's like straight away, here it is, right? Which I really like. So to me, that feels like really, really smooth and like this, I don't know, feels nicer looking at it. I'm kind of excited to go there, like if I was going. And it's kind of showing me different elements and it's up and down and ascend, descend. Like that to me like feels pretty nice. But Opus is really good as well. So between two of them, I don't know, I'll probably still prefer Fable, but like reasonably close. So yeah, maybe I'm just showing you the nice use case. But yeah, worth putting a bit of effort into this one if you're going on holiday. I want to have a look. What else should we finish on, man? I have so many tasks here. I can't remember looking at this one. So let's see what it does. So they all kind of did the same thing. So I wonder if it's going to be a different one. Oh yeah, I think it's a different one. So that test here is a short prompt. And what it does here is I would like for you to research the most interesting, impressive data set where I would learn something about the world and you can visualize for me. And a lot of the time they were kind of, I think there were like a bunch of earthquakes. I think that was mostly what everyone did. But here I think this is a new one. So everything you have ever touched made to 88 naturally occurring isotopes, and it's kind of showing me this data set. Actually, this is completely new, so I appreciate that, and it's teaching me something. I feel like I need to spend more time with this. Wow, that's actually cool. Okay, I like this. This is the first chart. Oh, so it's showing me the discoveries of it. Am I reading this right? And that's quite cool. Okay, that's you see, it's actually aligning with the prompt. I don't know what this is, don't really understand this, so I am learning something new. So that is cool. Yeah, and I think, okay, slightly sloppy like brackets and a dark mode, maybe not entirely appropriate, but this is quite cool. Like I like this visualization. I think this is quite nice. If you're just gonna look at others, oh, you know what? I actually don't remember this one. That's cool. So Sol 5.6. Sometimes I do so many tests and I can't quite later check all of them. Oh, and that's a bit buggy. So the scroll is kind of bad. But I love this original map. So it's showing the ocean has handwriting, 46 years of scientists, shown Robert. Anyway, you can kind of see that. That's kind of cool. Okay. I don't like that. One thing about GPT models is they kept generating these kind of websites, which I don't love. So yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's broken. Is this live? Another one from Kimi. But, oh wow, that's quite cool actually from Kimi. Yeah, I think Kimi is like one of these models is like, I think when it has a good generation, I think it is genuinely like better than many of the frontier ones. But you can see how many generations are just like, oh man, this is not good. But when it has a good one, and this is good. This is good stuff. So yeah, this has been quite, I think, an interesting set of generations. I hope you agree. Is that, like, for me personally, what my takeaway is that it's a really, really solid model, right? It's one of those models that, like, I think before this model, Anthropic was in a little bit of a funny situation, right? They had a really exceptional model come out, made a lot of waves, but it was too expensive to use. Right? You don't really want to have a like Fable running 24/7 and doing all sorts of things for you. Then the impression we got from like Opus 4.8, it's a good model. People were not like in love with it. Then they had like Sonnet 5 model, which I must say people didn't seem to like particularly at all, and it didn't seem to make any splash. So it wasn't really, I don't think there were many people who are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna now switch to Sonnet 5 and kind of use that. So the problem that they had is they kind of had a gap, right? So they didn't have like a really, really strong model that people really love to use in that daily driver category. And I think they have it now. Like it does look like quite a solid model. It does seem to generate like really, really nice UIs, does seem to generate really like quite nice 3D generations in here as well. Like we might go back to some of those. And now they have this kind of higher tier model as well that you don't have to use. Like you can just go to Fable if you just need that kind of top tier generations. And I think this is a good balance strategically for Anthropic, that they're not forcing everyone to use Fable. They don't seem to have compute to use Fable, to get everyone to use Fable. So that's kind of maybe will take some pressure off of that as well. And they also now have a model that's probably like really nice, solid competition to GPT models. it's hard to compare these tests with GPT models just because I think GPT models, like on the UI, they're just noticeably worse. But I think it's not completely fair representation of like every single thing that they can do. But now they have strong competition. So it's I would say all in all, pretty strong release, I would say, from Anthropic. It's certainly much, much better release than what we saw with like Sonnet 5, for example, that I don't think people particularly loved. But I don't think you should be deceived by all of the benchmarks that really show that, oh, now Opus is the better model versus Fable. I think in your more advanced tasks, more creative tasks, where you need that kind of deeper engagement from the model, it still feels like Fable would be the model to use. Try these models out, go on agent mode, explore all of these capabilities, and all of these models are currently running on it, so I hope you get the best ones and you enjoy using it. And as always, keep testing these models.